The point of NATO was to keep the Americans in Europe, the Russians out of Europe, and the Germans down. Moving on to Europe as a whole, much of the continent was once ravaged by war, as various countries were annihilating each other in a bloodbath. The US, as a result of this, in the aftermath of World War II and as a response to communism, set up NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, in part to stop these European countries from bickering and also in part to thwart the spread of communism. After the Cold War, many Eastern European countries that had a long history of being oppressed by the Russians ended up joining NATO. The point of NATO was to keep the Americans in Europe, the Russians out of Europe, and the Germans down. However, keeping the Russians out has certainly been the case, as Putin has oftentimes saber-rattled around taking over the Baltic states, parts of Poland, and other areas, not to mention his actual invasion of Ukraine. This has prompted countries like Finland and Sweden, once neutral, to join NATO. NATO Article 5 states that an attack on one country on its own soil is an attack on all of them, bringing out collective defense. This has only been used once, in the aftermath of the September 11th attacks by Al-Qaeda based in Afghanistan. Going back to the end of World War II, the US set up the Marshall Plan to rebuild much of Western Europe, or really any European country that was not adopting communism, in sharp contrast to the Soviet Union, which oftentimes overthrew governments and installed their own dictatorships. This not only led to the rebuilding of Western Europe, but also forged a strong set of bonds between Western Europe and the United States. Under American supervision, many European nations would set aside their differences and unite, creating social democracies, strong welfare states, capitalist economies, and by and large acted as a bulwark against communism, as their economies were slowly but surely integrating in what would later become the EU. The idea that the United States and Europe should maintain close relations is called Atlanticism. And this alliance across the vast ocean has remained a very core powerful ideology and framework in the face of Russia, an autocratic regime that does not respect liberal democracy. However, nonetheless, the relationship has ebbed and flowed, and in 2014 it would take over Crimea and then invade Ukraine in 2022. To this day, relations between the West and Russia are terrible.